patrol, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in at spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. As once again we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra, battle our way past the wild animals, sidestep Bigfoot, and enter the haunted Uncle Jimbo's cabin, stoke the fire, heat this place up to broadcast you live on this Thursday night, early Friday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing 7 days a week, 3 hours a night. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, conspiratorial, and so much more. Spaced Out Radio's theme music is brought to you by guitar god Ron Bumblefoot Thal. You can find his album, Little Brother is Watching, by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you're on Twitter, give us a follow, @SpacedOutRadio. We follow back. If you're on Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and of course our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we'd like to welcome in our fans listening in on the SHR Media Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, and of course, the SOR Space Travelers, along with Paranormal Forum. If you're a fan of Spaced Out Radio, coming soon to our website is the Space Travelers Membership Club, where for only $5 a month you can win prizes, take part in private group interviews, have a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The official newspaper of Spaced Out Radio is the New Agora newspaper out of Vancouver. And the official ghost hunting app of this show is the iPhone app, Spirit Storybox. You know, I'm always a little rigid about having paranormal shows on the air because to me, it's got to be about a story to tell. It has to have, no pun intended, some life to it. To many, and to many times, we see too many groups going to the same facilities, run-down hospitals, asylums, or closed-down prisons to investigate spirit activity. As much as I am a fan of playing with ghosts, my question is, what's the point? We already know the place is haunted. But for some investigators, finding out the stories behind the hauntings is what drives them to search for answers from the unknown. That's the type of investigator our guest tonight is. Jeff Dwyer has been traveling all over the United States looking at anything that's spooky. He feels most ghost sightings actually come from people who don't believe in ghosts at all. Imagine that theory. Whether it's technical or old school, Jeff isn't afraid to get down and dirty for the story he is writing about. His books can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any major bookstores. If you wish to check out his website, it's jeffdwyer.com. So, let's get into some West Coast paranormal from Seattle all the way down to California. Jeff Dwyer, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be with you tonight. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Well, you know what? We don't do enough paranormal. I'm going to tell you that right now. I love playing with ghosts. I love talking about them. But the one thing that I get a little frustrated with is it seems like all these little groups that are popping up, what I call the weekend paranormal warriors, they seem to be going to the same places that everybody else is. And it's hard, really, to find a story in the paranormal because nobody seems to want the story. They just want the evidence. And that's where, when I found you, I got all excited. I had to bring you on.
Well, you're quite right. People tend to go out for that quick paranormal experience. It's the Saturday night thrill, and they don't do a lot of research before they go. And when they come out of the paranormal site, they're almost ready to move on to the next one without trying to research the background of what they may have experienced. And I feel the frustration, too. I see a lot of websites out there, paranormal groups, and they like to brag that they do 300 investigations a year. And you think about that, that's one almost every night. But these things are very shallow investigations. In fact, I don't even think you could call it that. They're just visits to a haunted place, pick up a few EVP, report a few personal experiences, and bang, move on to something else.
Do you ever get frustrated with the way the paranormal field has gone with the creation and the popularity of all these television shows, Jeff?
Well, some of the shows I do like. There are some that have lasted only a season or two that I thought were ridiculous right from the start. It's hard to figure what these producers are after. When you look at a show, you think, my gosh, how did somebody convince a producer or production company to put up the money and the effort to create a show that from square one is patently ridiculous? There's only one or two out there that I think really have the legs to last a long time. Ghost Adventures is one that I do like. I like some of the biopics, so to speak. There's some shows that are very documentary where they reenact the ghostly experience that people have had. Those tend to be a little bit repetitive and slow for me, however, but they're still pretty interesting, and they do depict real experiences of real people. Some of the others are like the ones we just described. It's like the haunted experience of the week. We dash in, we spend a couple of days, and we dash out and move on, and that's about it.
Before we get too hot and heavy into ghost hunters and what's going on, I do love to warm up my audience a little bit by getting them to know you a little bit. When did you start really focusing on the paranormal, and when did this become a real crush or addiction for you?
It was about 20 years ago that I decided I have the time and resources to start getting into this on a realistic and serious level. I had my first paranormal experience when I was 12 years old, and from then on, for the next few years, it was just a matter of collecting ghost stories that appeared in magazines and newspapers and getting in and out of some of the old houses in my hometown of Alameda, California. Alameda is an island community populated with a lot of Victorian mansions. And when I was a kid, many of them were vacant, so my friends and I would break into them and just to snoop around, and I would have quite a few paranormal experiences. But it was many years later, after I got out of school and got my career established and all of that I had the time and resources to start traveling around and researching things. And, of course, the Internet made it more feasible to do that sort of thing because I could start collecting stories off the Internet and contacting people and studying maps and things of that sort, which really put a lot of depth into my investigations. So I'd say I've been at it seriously now for about 20 years.
Do you still have fun with it after all that time?
Yeah, I do, amazingly, because everywhere I go, it's like it's a brand new experience. As you know, my books focus on specific geographic locations, and so if I'm going to Seattle or Portland or Los Angeles or New Orleans, it's just a whole new collection of haunted places. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then coming home with all the evidence and information, I spend months writing a book and literally get to relive those firsthand experiences. So, yeah, it's still a lot of fun for me.
When you decided, Jeff, to tell your family, your friends, your wife that this was a passion of yours, this is the direction you wanted to go, how many eye rolls did you get? How many people were saying, are you serious right now? You want to go play with dead people?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I get that question a lot because I'm a doctor and I work in a hospital, and people who interview me say, your colleagues, the people who work with you, must think you're crazy. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. You would be surprised how many people in the medical profession and others who work in the hospital really think this is cool stuff. And, for example, our hospital engineers who work sometimes through the night on floors that are closed down, that sort of thing, will call me and they'll say, you can't imagine what happened last night up on 5 East. The toolbox was scooting down the hall by itself, that kind of a thing. And nurses will call me from the chemotherapy center and tell me about dead patients that they have seen sitting in the chairs waiting for their chemotherapy, and the same thing with ICU nurses and ER. So I don't get the eye rolling. In fact, many people think this is really, really cool. In terms of my family, I've been fortunate that everyone in my family is really into this and seems to have been into it right from the start. So I didn't have to convince them that this is a worthwhile thing to pursue. So I've been really lucky in that regard.
You don't get a lot of doctors out there prescribing to the paranormal because it's such a scientific career. My cousin is one of the top medicinal doctors in Canada when it comes to people who are traveling and needing their shots or any type of medicines. He's just a brilliant man. But he's even had, and we've had this conversation before, he's even had no experiences and really more focuses on the science. How were you able to win your colleagues over by saying, look, there's more to this than just what we've learned in the books or what we prescribe as medicinal?
Yeah. I never really tried to convince people of the reality of ghosts and other paranormal phenomenon. But what I've found is people will come up to me and they'll, at different events, book signings particularly, they'll walk by my table in a bookstore and see the books, and they'll say, I don't really believe in this ghost stuff. And then there's a little pause, and then they say, however, after my grandmother passed away and we were cleaning out her house, I could hear her familiar footsteps walking up and down the stairs. And I said, well, there you go. You had a paranormal experience that could not be explained by any other way except it was a ghostly encounter. And then they kind of think, well, hey, maybe there's something to this after all. But I found that you can't convince a skeptic. Nothing will convince a skeptic or a disbeliever other than a clear firsthand experience. All I do is ask people to keep an open mind and remind them that these things are all around us. If you just open your mind and put away your skepticism and your bias and just see what happens.
It really is that easy, isn't it, when it comes to just being able to investigate, because there is paranormal everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in a new building, old building, in a park, at a cemetery, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. And the new buildings may be on a site once occupied by, a hotel that burned down in 1906, killing 30 people, that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter whether it's an old or new building, that sort of thing. And yeah, these things are everywhere, and it's really a matter of just settling your mind so that you're more open to things. And sometimes I recommend people perform a little bit of a meditation, which I describe in my books. And it's not a matter of going into a deep trance by any means. It's simply clearing the mind of those external and internal distractions that we all have throughout the day so that you can be open and sensitive to a paranormal sound or movement or feeling of the atmosphere around you. And then once you make that perception, you can kind of move on and develop that, and you may see an apparition or hear a spoken word and have that ghostly experience at places that you never thought you would.
You've been doing this for over 20 years, and I'm very curious to get your opinion on this. We've seen in the last 5 to 8 years, the amount of technology advanced so far in the field of the paranormal. Back then, it was you probably needed a psychic, you probably needed a digital voice recorder, a Canon AE-35, and some good Kodak film. But now we have laser grids, we have any sorts of meters, infrared cameras, FLIRs, everything. Has it amazed you how the paranormal has really taken off technically?
Well, I have some pretty strong feelings about this, the technical aspect of paranormal investigation, because it's impressive to see the kinds of devices that are being developed on the one hand. On the other hand, looking at the way computers have developed over the last 15 years or so, it's not at all surprising to see these things like the Ovilus and things that people call the ghost box, where you can create radio frequencies that a ghost can select to pull up a word, that kind of thing. And also, infrared cameras are becoming fairly inexpensive, and of course digital audio recorders are pretty cheap too, so it's not surprising that people have embraced these things. What has bothered me a lot, and I wrote about this in my book, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation, is that most of these things are being used incorrectly. The first part of that is most people don't understand the operating limitations of the device they're using, especially these wide spectrum cameras that take in not only visible light but ultraviolet and infrared, and FLIRs, which are very expensive. People spend a lot of money buying a FLIR, and they think this is going to be the key to capturing evidence of ghostly manifestations. EMF, electromagnetic field detectors, are widely used because they're pretty cheap. But people just don't understand the operating limitations of these things, and they don't understand the inaccuracy of these things. Many of these devices pick up stray radio signals and electromagnetic fields from devices that may be unplugged from the wall, but they still emit an electromagnetic field. And even humans emit an electromagnetic field. So if you walk around with a group of 5 people waving your EMF meter in the air, you're going to pick up a few needle swings, and it doesn't mean a ghost is there. It means that the 3 guys standing right next to you are emitting these fields. So these things are used incorrectly. People don't know the operating limitations. They don't understand how sensitive these devices are to things other than paranormal. The second thing that bothers me about all these devices is that ghosts do not exist on the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, many people who use these devices, particularly the cast of a TV show called Ghost Lab, which lasted only 1 year, thank God, they would go out with a trailer full of about $50,000 worth of devices and set this stuff up and rave about a little bit of a needle swing or something like that. But ghosts do not exist on the electromagnetic field spectrum. So that means that when you capture an audio signal or an image or something like that, it's not being created by the sensors in that camera. What's going on is the ghost can create a psychic energy that bypasses those sensors and influences the circuits within a recorder or a camera or something like that. So for that reason, you can't develop these devices based on the electromagnetic spectrum and think you're going to get better and better evidence of ghostly manifestations. It doesn't work that way.
What gear is reliable then, in your opinion?
I think one of the best things to do if you want to pursue the technical approach to ghost hunting, which is fine, I use it a lot myself, is the digital audio recorder. They're fairly cheap, and you can connect them up to your computer and edit the EVP that you get. You can enhance it so you can pick up things that you may not hear through a headset, that sort of thing. And the ghosts find it fairly easy to project the energy of their vocalizations to the circuits of these things. They find it fairly easy. And so I use a audio recorder quite a bit. And you can get a lot of signals on that thing. If you walk around with an EMF meter, those things are prone to so many inputs. I mean, if somebody in an electric car drives by you 300 feet away, you're going to get a big needle swing. So you could be in the basement of an old house, and a Tesla drives down the street, and you're going to get that needle swing and think that you've had a ghostly encounter, but you may be completely unaware that the car went down the street. So you walk out of there claiming you've got this great evidence. In fact, you don't. With an audio recorder, it's with you, and it's not prone to those kinds of interfering signals. It's not prone to interference by radio signals as well. So I think the digital recorder is the best thing to go with.
Do you think there has to be more personable investigative tools like instinct, judgment, intuition along those lines when you're on a ghost hunt rather than having to rely on all of the technology?
Yeah, I'm really a strong advocate of using both the technical and psychic methods of paranormal investigation. My investigation technique is based largely on psychic ability. I have psychic ability to see and hear ghosts. I've seen several apparitions, hear ghosts frequently, pick up their presence by sensing changes in the atmosphere, that kind of thing. And what I try to do then is corroborate those perceptions with an audio recorder. And it's interesting how often the audio recorder will corroborate what I pick up psychically. But I think the psychic method of paranormal investigation is a good one to pursue because, number one, I'm usually not that interested in getting evidence that I can show to 20 people. A lot of technical ghost hunters, that's their big thing. They want to have a library of 500 EVP that they can impress people with. And most of those are just stray sounds or a cough or something like that. They're nothing really specific. But I think the psychic experience is primarily what I'm interested in. So that's why I use that technique. Plus, I feel that I have a talent for that sort of thing. So if you just want to have a good ghostly experience, and also if you want to engage a ghost and have a more vivid, longer lasting, and more frequent experience with ghosts, the psychic method is more useful than a technical device.
A lot of people out there who are in the ghost field do not believe in psychics. They think that they can taint an investigation with their own personal, I don't want to say abilities, but more so their own personal opinions of what is there or what is not there. What is your opinion of that, being an intuitive as well?
Well, it's definitely true that psychics are prone to bias and also many pitfalls of practice. If somebody says, hey, we're going to go to a haunted mansion tonight, people have had a lot of freaky experiences there. Why don't you come along? Well, right away, the psychic goes in with the expectation of having a paranormal experience. So there's a bias right there. On the other hand, I'm an advocate of psychics doing some research before they go. I hear a lot of psychics say, I don't want to know anything about what happened in this house. I don't want to know anything about other people's experiences or the gender or age of the ghost that may be there, or any of that stuff. And they insist on this because they want to, when they give their report of their experiences, they want to know if that matches up with what other people have found. And that's an attempt to establish corroboration. It's admirable. That's a good way to do it. But my feeling is when I go to these places, I like to do some advanced research because my psychic method is to establish a familiarity with the ghost so that I get more vivid and longer-lasting experiences. If you walk into a place cold and you just say, hi, I'm a psychic, my name is Jeff, and I'm here to speak to any spirits that may be in this house, most ghosts are in a sleep state, and those that are not would probably not be very interested in me. But if I walked into a house with some prior experience and I said, hello, my name is Jeff, I'm here to speak to Jim Jones, here at 1610 Walnut Street in Alameda. Jim, I want to enter the closet where you shot yourself with your brother's .357 Magnum last week. That ghost is all of a sudden really keenly interested in me and wondering, how does this guy know about all this stuff? And that wakes the ghost up, and we establish a very strong communication after that. But it's always difficult to get the corroboration, so I carry an audio recorder with me, too, to see if I can pick up some vocalizations of the ghost, or at least sounds of that ghost as well.
We only have about a minute before we're going to hop out for our first break, Jeff, and if you want to carry this answer over after the break, I really don't mind. But what would be your advice for any new people who are getting into this, or the weekend warriors who are wanting to expand into making this more of a full-time adventure?
Okay, that's really two parts. Let me answer the first one before the break. For the new person coming in, I think it's really very useful to do some reading. And yes, I'm going to suggest my books, but there are other good books out there as well. But, look around, find a book that describes both psychic and technical methodologies. And I have a book called, Use Your Psychic Powers to Experience Ghosts, which is strictly on the psychic methodology. And then I have a book called The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation, which covers both psychic and technical. Either one of these books will help a new person get launched in a very good way into the field of paranormal investigation. Now let's talk about the Weekend Warrior after the break.
All right, sounds good. We are talking with Jeff Dwyer tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He is a paranormal author, a psychic investigator as well. His website is jeffdwyer.com. You can find any of his books, including Ghost Hunter's Guide to California's Gold Rush Country, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore. He is that popular. You can find his books everywhere. That's the whole point. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back after this break.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Hi there. This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost?
Look no further than Spaced Out Radio.
SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click on to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on radio
or our website, including social media.
From commercial spots to banners, we have it all.
Check out our competitive pricing today.
Want to connect with us online? Find us on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, on Twitter, @Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. All right, space travelers, here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. If you're on the SHR Media Network listening in Spaced Out Radio's chat room on Spreaker, on Paranormal Forum, or on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, or the SOR Space Travelers, absolutely appreciate all of you tuning us in tonight. Tomorrow night on the show, we're staying in the field of the paranormal. Christopher Balzano will join us with the most haunted sites in America. Going back to back with the paranormal. Rare on this show, but I'm loving it. Love talking ghosts anytime. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, we can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where you can subscribe to hear our archives, is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking with paranormal author Jeff Dwyer, who has written many books about his paranormal experiences and investigations. We welcome Jeff back, as his website is jeffdwyer.com. Jeff, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh, it's really been fun so far. Let's keep it going.
Right before the break, we were talking about advice you have for new investigators or the weekend warriors who want to take this a little bit more serious. Getting into the weekend warrior stuff, I realize that can be frustrating, but is it a point where, for, say, the weekend paranormal investigators to branch out and go where other people are not going?
Well, everybody in the paranormal field wants to find a new spot. People do go to places that are pretty popular. That's something that a lot of people do, but everyone really wants to find that unique, previously undiscovered haunted location that turns out to be a hot find. That's a tough thing to do unless you're willing to do a lot of research or accept the idea that is not very commonly followed, and that is that ghosts are being produced every day. You know, a lot of people, especially people who have been in the field for a while, the weekend warriors, they tend to go to the old places, you know, the old forts or the plantations in the South or the asylums that closed in 1958, those kinds of places, looking for ghosts. And I think they don't realize that ghosts are being produced every day. And one of the things that I do is in my town, when I hear that there is a tragic and fatal automobile accident or a murder, I go there as quickly as I can, because there's a good chance that the ghost of that victim is there at that site at that moment. And it's really interesting to experience the things that you can pick up at these places. You pick up imprints of the criminal activity or the accident, but you can also pick up ghosts as well. So I think the weekend warrior, if they want to look for a new spot, ought to think about places where new ghosts are being produced almost on a daily basis in some large cities. It's a delicate process too, because you run into law enforcement and emergency responders and sometimes family members. So it's very important to be ethical and understand proper boundaries in going to these places. But I found that even a day or two after a murder, crime scene people are gone. and you can have almost free access to a place. And it's really interesting. In fact, I wrote a book about that. I was so intrigued with it. I wrote a book called Paranormal CSI, which is coming out in about another month or so, and it's using ghost hunting techniques to investigate crime scenes. So the weekend warriors might want to think about going to these places. I would recommend, though, you be very cautious. Don't break any laws. Don't violate any private property, that sort of thing, and be very respectful of people who are involved in the scene, because interfering with crime scene investigators or police or anything like that can bring with it some serious consequences.
There is one ghost hunter out there, and I never mention his name, but he believes that the best time to get a hold of a spirit is within a couple hours of learning of that spirit's passing, or as close to the time of death as possible. Do you buy into that theory?
I think that's I think you're going to find that when people die, when we die, there's a period of confusion, and the ghost is seeking emotional stability. And this is why they usually stay at the place where they died, even if it's not a pleasant place. They'll stay there for a while and until they feel somebody recognizes that they are there. If you can imagine, at the site of a tragic accident, there's people running around, and the ghosts may feel that nobody can see them and no one is paying any attention to them. So they're very emotionally unstable at that point. And if there's somebody who's standing around who is receptive to the ghost, that ghost will communicate with that person. And it's amazing what you might hear at these places. So, yeah, I do believe that. I work in a hospital, and many of the people I speak to in the hospital say that, within a short time after a patient's death, that patient may be seen walking the halls. Or sometimes the body will be removed from the room and taken to the morgue, and then an hour later the nurse passes by the room and sees that same person back in bed. What the nurse saw is a ghost, not the body returned to the bed. So, yeah, soon after death, that's a really good time to look for a ghost.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, Jeff, in regards to you being a doctor as well. Have you ever had a patient pass right in front of you when the room is cleared? You just kind of sit there and talk to them to see if they're still there?
Yeah, I have, and it's unfortunately I've not been able in that circumstance to have a recorder going or anything like that. I feel that is just pushing the boundaries of ethics to do that. I'm there as a clinician, but once the patient passes, I'll sit quietly and respectfully and try to keep myself open to any manifestations. And I've heard the voice of the patient several times speaking. They say some of the things are very, very much what you'd expect. They'd say, "Where am I? Where am I going? What happened to me?" That kind of thing. I'll hear that. But yeah, hospitals are very haunted places. They're in my top 5 list of haunted places.
When you are sitting there in, say, a room where a patient has just passed, and of course, due to ethics, you don't have your devices with you to record anything, and you're being intuitive, you're hearing these voices. Do you ever just sit with them and just chat with them and explain what is going to happen here and kind of walk them through it, almost like counseling?
I've wanted to do that, but it's not a situation where I can, because there are other people around. Sometimes there are family members around and other staff members, so I've really not had that opportunity to do that. I very much like to do it, but it's just not something that's panned out so far.
That would make it a whole different ballgame, would it not? I don't mean to laugh, but in the reality of it, I mean, to be able to almost counsel people as they transition to the next stage of life, it would make it for an interesting book, would it not?
Yeah, it would. I've known some hospice nurses who do that sort of thing. They will be in the home of a terminally ill patient, and when the patient passes, I've known a few nurses who will talk about the transition and what it means and try to calm the spirit and remind the spirit that there's a new transition here onto another level of existence. But as I said, it's not something I've been able to do.
Francesca has a question in the SOR chat room on Spreaker, and she's asking, have you ever heard people in palliative care talk about the people or the voices?
You mean the clinicians who are giving palliative care?
Well, I'll give you an example personally. My wife's grandmother, when she passed away, a couple hours before she passed, she was actually talking to people on the other side that were not in the room.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's actually a pretty common experience. And in fact, it's really interesting what I hear from people within a few days of their death. I mean, a few days prior to their death, I'll go up and visit them, and they'll say they had the strangest experience while napping that afternoon. They said, thought I was napping, but I saw my dead brother and my grandfather who died 30 years ago and other dead relatives come in the room to visit me. They'd say, what does that mean? And, I don't want to tell them what I think it means. But it's an experience that tends to be a prelude to death when your deceased relatives who come to visit you. And I've got a patient right now who this has been going on for actually several weeks. And it's a little perplexing because he's very stable right now in terms of his medical conditions. And I would be surprised if he were to pass soon. But he comes in and he says, "Oh, you'll never guess who visited me last night." And it's really interesting because by and large, when people start seeing or speaking to deceased relatives and friends, it means their death is coming soon.
Do we see a lot of that happen where when we get ready to pass, all of a sudden family members and friends who have passed previous to us come to almost welcome us to the other side?
Well, I think that's true with patients who are terminally ill or at least very ill. I think for the rest of us, I don't know if that holds true, because dying from an accident, for instance, I don't think that's preordained. So I think if you had a visit from your relatives and you were otherwise quite healthy and vibrant and all of that, I'm not sure that portends your accidental death in the next few days. But it seems to be that when somebody has a terminal illness, that attracts or opens a portal that allows deceased relatives to come and visit. I would be a little nervous if I started feeling like I was being visited by my deceased relatives.
We are talking with author Jeff Dwyer tonight on Spaced Out Radio. All of his books can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore. His website is jeffdwyer.com. We are talking paranormal tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Have you ever seen a spirit leave the body, Jeff?
Yes, I have, and it's really interesting because it lifted off from the body in a way that it was like a white cloud, but with all the details of the deceased. But as soon as this apparition was completely free of the body, it became pretty much amorphous, just a white cloud, and then it just disappeared into the atmosphere of the room. But I've seen that 3 times over the last 25 years or so, I'd say. So they come out with details, and then it's just gone. And I think what we're seeing here, what a ghost really is, it's the consciousness or mind of the dead person. The body's dead, but the mind is still alive. And that's really what a ghost is. A ghost retains energy, thoughts, and information of experiences, knowledge it had in life. Some of this is accessible, some of it is not to the ghost in this state. But they exist in this state, and this is not a entity that shows up on the electromagnetic field or spectrum rather. It's a type of energy that is undefined. We don't know what it is. People are trying to research it, but it is some type of energy that can interact with our environment at times, but it's still something that's not measurable by today's technology.
I have to tell you, you just confirmed something very, very large that happened to me in 2012. I was at the foot of my wife's grandmother's passing. I was literally standing at her feet, my wife beside me, and the entire time from when I had walked in that room, I had felt the energy of the angel of death. And I was kind of taunting it, saying, I know you're in here, where are you? And it felt like his energy was bouncing all over the room. And then about 9 minutes before she breathed her final breath, and I get goosebumps every time I tell this story, as I was standing right at her feet, my wife on my right, I literally felt like him say to me, all right, you want to see it? Let's do this. Watch. And I watched her spirit come right out of the body. He hung it there right for me to get a look at it for about 2-3 seconds before it absolutely shot right through the ceiling of her hospice room, and his energy was gone at the snap of a finger. I still can't believe that I saw that.
That's a great experience. That is tremendous. Wow.
So you confirmed a lot for me, and I thank you for that.
That is really great. That's a wonderful experience. You know, many people don't ever have anything like that. A lot of paranormal investigators who've been at it many years have never experienced something like that.
I want to get into debunking. A lot of...
Yes.
I don't know why I get so frustrated with that word. I just do. But it seems like more people are interested in debunking than absolutely looking for positive evidence out there. In your opinion, what is the difference, Jeff?
Yeah, I do. My approach that I've talked about in my books is not so much to emphasize debunking, but to look for corroboration of what we've experienced. You know, a lot of the cast of TV shows, as soon as something happens, they sort of jump on it and they want to prove how honest they are so that they make a big deal out of debunking the process instead of looking for some corroboration of what they experienced. And that's what I emphasize in my writings about technical aspects of ghost investigations. Look for devices or processes that allow you to corroborate whatever evidence you pick up. I often recommend people have more than one digital audio recorder going at one time. If you use infrared video cameras, set them up so that you have two of them trained on the same scene, so that if one picks up something, you know, the other one's got a different angle on it, and that helps you corroborate what you've got instead of trying to debunk. It's always important, however, to eliminate the possibility of interference in any technical efforts to capture evidence. You've got to make sure that windows are not rattling or bushes are not scratching against the window because of the wind outside, that kind of thing. And if you use electromagnetic field detectors, you've got to remove everything from the room that has electronics in it. Even if it's unplugged from the wall, a device like a television can still emit an electromagnetic field. So you've got to do that sort of thing. So it's important to eliminate the possibility of confounding signals, but mostly I emphasize corroboration rather than debunking.
Are there too many people out there trying to put a human aspect on the unhuman in regards to debunking?
Put a human aspect on it? I'm not sure what you're getting at here, Dave. Can you help me out?
Well, what I'm trying to say here is, it looks like that there's always someone out there that no matter what you can provide for them as evidence, they say, well, that you were probably near an electrical source or pipes making noise. They always look for that human aspect to what the evidence may be, rather than compounding it and saying, well, you may have something truly here.
Oh, yeah. The first thing that critics will do is to point out flaws in one's investigational techniques. You know, if you are walking around an old house and your audio recorder picked up, creaking floorboards or something like that, the first inference is, hey, you did that because you were walking all over the place and it's got an old floor. Yeah, that's something that critics will pounce on right away, to start criticizing the investigator rather than trying to look deeper into the nature of the evidence first and then ask for corroboration. So yeah, that's pretty common. And usually that's a matter of competition, between investigators. Everybody wants to have a cooler story than the next guy about what happened to them or what kind of evidence they picked up. So yeah, they point a finger at the investigator first.
I want to start focusing in here on your books as we transition into the second hour that we will have with you. One of your books that absolutely works well with me is Ghost Hunter's Guide to California's Gold Rush Country. And the reason why is I'm on the Canadian side of the Gold Rush Trail right now. Like literally the Gold Rush Trail, if I were to look out my window, is probably half a mile east of where I am right now. And it's a huge story with a lot of sad facts, a lot of rich people, and a lot of evil that goes on with it. How much fun did you have writing this book?
Well, a lot of fun because I had been going up to the Gold Rush Country since I was a little kid. We had a house at Lake Tahoe, and every August we'd stay up there for the month. And, of course, you travel through the Gold Rush Country to get to Tahoe. You're traveling through Placerville and Markleyville and all these places. And then we would take time to go up and down Highway 49, which runs about 200 miles along the west slope of the Sierras. And there's numerous towns along there that still exist today. Some of them are thriving, some of them are just barely holding on, and some of them are just, a few foundations of their former glory, leftover foundations. But there's so many places to explore and so many places you can get into. A lot of old inns and bars and places like that are still operating, so you can spend the night in the National Hotel, for instance, in Nevada City, and that place opened in 1858. And it's a great place. Ghost Adventures has been there. Ghost Hunters have been there, too, and a lot of people go there, and the place is full of ghosts, and people always have paranormal experiences. So I've been all the way up and down Highway 49, hitting all these places, and it's just always fun because in almost every place you can have a paranormal experience. It's almost assured.
Pardon my Canadian ignorance here, but is that where the San Francisco 49ers get their name from?
Yes, it is. The 49ers were people who rushed to California in 1849 after gold was discovered in 1848. The word spread throughout the world, and in 1849, 300,000 people came from all over the world to California. They were the 49ers, the gold rushers. And, in fact, the cheerleaders for the San Francisco 49ers are called the gold diggers. That's a term actually it's applied in another way, but people came here in 1849 were digging for gold.
No kidding. Oh.
Yeah.
All right, well, I learned a little bit today. I tied it all in. I appreciate that, because being in Canada, I'm a Canadian football fan, but I always wondered how the 49ers got their name, and that just made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Mm-hmm.
The
Oakland Raiders got their name because of the pirates and the oyster bed raiders that used to operate on San Francisco Bay back in the 19th century.
Very interesting. I could sit with you for a long time just to learn NFL name history, that's for sure. That's for sure.
I think that's the extent of it, maybe. I don't know how the Los Angeles Rams ever got that name, because I don't think Rams were raised in Los Angeles at any time.
Well, I'll give you a little hint, not that it means much to most American people, but up here, our Canadian Football League team is the British Columbia Lions, and they actually were going to extend it to Mountain Lions because there are so many mountain lions here in British Columbia, but it just sounded way too long, so they eliminated the mountain part. That's how they got their name. So there's always
that
a story.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a story.
The one thing I love about the Gold Rush Trail as it extends from California straight up through British Columbia into the Yukon and Alaska is it really is a trail of lying, deceit, riches, murder. Did you, in your investigations and talking with the spirits and the stories, were you surprised at how much of all those categories there were from back then?
Not really, because I'd been reading about the Gold Rush country since I was a little kid, and there are all kinds of stories about the robbers that were robbing stagecoaches and robbing people who made money digging for gold in the creeks. There were stories about hangings and murders and all kinds of things. In fact, Placerville, which is a town on Highway 49 up here in the Sierras, it used to be called Hangtown. And when I was a kid, we would drive through there. My dad would say, well, here we go. We're going through Hangtown. And then he'd tell us a story about how it was well known for just hanging people who got out of line. I mean, sometimes it wasn't even because they committed murder. They were just robbers who went around robbing people, so the townspeople just strung them up. And there was a tree in that town that was used all the time, and it's now occupied by a bar, which is called the Hangtown Bar. So to answer your question, no, I'm not too surprised at all, because it was a very tumultuous time when you had this massive influx of people who literally were racing against each other to get to the best places. And then there were others who came in to prey upon those who found gold. And there's a little town called Hornitos in the southern end of the Gold Rush country, which is very, very haunted. And this was a really bad town, but it sat on the route from the Gold Rush country to Los Angeles. And people would come back from the Gold Rush country loaded with gold, heading to Los Angeles to get on a ship to go back to the East Coast. The bad guys knew this, and so they sat in that town waiting for these successful gold miners to come through town, and then they would just rob them and kill them, take their gold. And there were hundreds of murders in that town. There was no law enforcement at all until about 1861. It was a real wild place. So that kind of thing was really pretty much common all over the Gold Rush country. Plus, there were other tragedies, too. As you might expect, mines would collapse, trapping 20, 30, 40 miners, and they were never dug out. There were lots of fires. All the towns in the Gold Rush country were built quickly of wood, and in the summer heat, the wood would dry out, and then usually by September, October, the whole town would burn down, and people would die in these fires. So that would create quite a few ghosts as well.
We are talking with author Jeff Dwyer tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking about paranormal along the West Coast, just chatting about the Gold Rush Trail from California all the way up to Alaska and through my little area, British Columbia here. You can find any of Jeff's books on his website, jeffdwyer.com. Go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore. They are there. Check it out today. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio on the Spreaker.com network.
Do you believe you've been in contact with extraterrestrials? Have you seen the Greys, the Mantis, or the Reptilians? I am Samantha Mullet, and on the second Tuesday of each month, you can listen and learn from my experiences with off-worlders on Spaced Out Radio's The ET Experience. With host Dave Scott, we'll sit down and chat about what's going on with our friends from other worlds. We'll also try to answer your questions, so please tune in on the second Tuesday of the month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio. And we give it up to you guys, all the listeners, and the live listeners usually get something special and hang out in the chat room. And we love to have you. So we'll see you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. You know where.
If you're a fan of social media, you can follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where our archives are stored, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight as we welcome in those listening in on Paranormal Forum. We welcome in everybody at the SHR Media Network, on Spreaker, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room, and on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, and the SOR Space Travelers chat room. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night, we're staying in the field of the paranormal. Christopher Balzano will join us. We're going to talk about haunted America and the most haunted places around the United States. And then Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, comes in for Spaced Out Weekend, Saturdays and Sunday nights. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where we store our archives, you can subscribe to it, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking paranormal with author Jeff Dwyer, his website, jeffdwyer.com. If you want to check out any of his books, you go to his website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. We got 1 hour left with you, and I'm excited about it.
Okay.
All right. We have some questions coming in from our chat rooms because we like the audience interaction here. I'm going to start off with Claudia in the SOR Space Travelers. Has a person who has passed on ever told you, Jeff, information that the family has needed to know?
Not the kind of thing you might be getting at. No one has told me where an insurance policy is hidden or something like that. No, usually it's more of an emotional message, like tell them I love them, tell them I'm okay, that kind of thing. And at the right moment, I'll pass that on to the family. It's interesting. I pick up that kind of message often either in the hospital or at the funeral. A lot of ghosts go to their own funeral, and they look around for somebody who might be receptive to their efforts to communicate. And usually it's something like, tell my wife I love her, tell my kids I love them, that kind of a thing. but no secret information about buried treasure or other information, no.
Joe has a question in the SOR Space Travelers for you. He says, Jeff, people usually see ghosts in the daytime or at night when all the lights are on. Why do ghost hunters and shows like that always have to be in pitch darkness?
Yeah, I've wondered that myself, and that's kind of one of those things that really bugs me. I've seen a lot of apparitions, and the vast majority of them are in lighted rooms or in broad daylight outside, and I've always wondered why these ghost shows do the lights out thing, you know. I guess it makes for good TV. It looks pretty spooky on TV instead of walking around a well-lighted room, you know, trying to do an investigation. But also it interests me that when they go to places, they interview a person who lives in a house, for instance, who's had experiences with a ghost, and those experiences often occur during daytime or early evening or something like that. But the investigation is staged at 3 a.m. And I'm wondering, why do you have to go to 3 a.m. to look for a ghost that shows up at 11 a.m. in the morning while someone's doing laundry in the basement? One show that's no longer on, Paranormal State, which I used to like quite a bit, they were really big into this 3 a.m. thing. You know, they would do their investigations and they go dark and sit there through the 3 a.m. hour trying to find ghosts. And I just think that was a ridiculous approach, because for me it's like anytime, anywhere, and mostly it's in well-lighted places. So I don't think you need to be in a completely dark spot.
Well, apparently their theory behind that was that 3 o'clock is basically close to the witching hour, when something to do with the veil drops or is at its thinnest or something along those lines.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I've heard also that 3 o'clock is like the devil's hour. It's the opposite from 3 in the afternoon when Jesus was crucified, and so 3 a.m. is when the devil's going to show up. I've heard all kinds of explanations about this 3 a.m. I do appreciate the fact that sometimes it's easier to experience ghosts if the environment is still, and it may not be still during the daylight hours. There may be traffic on the street nearby or people in and out of the building, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I can appreciate where you may have to wait until everyone's gone home for the day and you've got an office building to yourself after 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That's happened to me too, but I don't expect that there's something magic about a period of time after midnight when the ghost is going to show up, because that ghost can show up anytime.
In the SOR chat room on Spreaker, we have a brand new listener. He goes by Trippin' Fool on here. He is asking, why do people think they can find ghosts in graveyards? He's always thought the energy would stay at the scene of the death and not where the body is.
Yeah, most ghosts don't show up in graveyards. Most cemeteries where people go for investigations are not haunted with the spirits of the deceased. There are a lot of imprints in cemeteries that are created by visitors, living people who visit a grave frequently and pour out their emotions, and that lays down these imprints. So graveyards are a really good place to go and practice your techniques. EVP can pick up audio imprints. It's a good place to go and practice. The ghosts that are in a cemetery, usually they show up if a couple things have happened. One is if they're in the wrong grave. The people who operate the graveyard may put a headstone on the wrong grave, and so the ghost is trying to find someone to correct that. Or if the grave has been desecrated by vandals or damaged by some environmental process, like a fallen tree, for instance, a ghost will show up and try to get the attention of somebody. I have run into a few ghosts in the graveyards that are the ghosts of the cemetery manager who passed away, but is still there carrying on his work, that sort of thing. But generally, you're not going to find the ghosts of all those people in those graves in the graveyard. They're not there.
Follow-up question from Trippin' Fool in regards to television shows, because it is all about ratings. Have you ever seen where these television shows are faking evidence in order to try and get an audience response?
I've worked on a number of them, and I have to say that I have not seen or heard any discussion or anything that makes me think things are being faked. I've worked on ghost adventures. I've been in front of the camera on 3 episodes and done research for numerous others. And when I'm with the team filming, I've never heard the slightest word about reproducing something or restaging something. Sometimes people like to criticize that show and others, but that show in particular, I can honestly tell you and your listeners that I've never seen anything that makes me think that things are faked. And I can tell you that when we filmed, things happen. A lot of sounds and things that don't get in the final cut to the show. A lot of EVP and a lot of lights and things of this sort don't get in the final cut. But things really happen, especially when we filmed out at Alcatraz. I've done a few other shows for Comcast TV and for ABC and others, and I've never been asked by the producers to fake anything. And honestly, it wasn't necessary because we tend to get a fair amount of really interesting stuff when we go film places. Now, I know that there's rumors. I've been told by people who witnessed other shows being filmed, and they've witnessed staging of things. They've witnessed people hiding in the background and rolling a marble down a hallway so that the host can be shocked and amazed and claim a ghost did that. I have no firsthand experience with that. These are stories that I've heard from others.
Claudia is asking in the SOR Space Travelers room on Facebook, how long does it normally take to understand that you're dead? Have you ever found out that answer? And how long does it normally take to adjust to being in spirit?
Yeah, that's highly variable. Some ghosts know they're dead right away and find it a relief, particularly if they've had a long, protracted terminal illness that was quite miserable. And once they feel liberated from the body, there's a sense of relief. And I believe that ghosts can perceive this next level of existence that we cannot. And some call it the white light, crossing over a tunnel, that sort of thing. And I think they immediately get the impression that finally they are relieved from this misery that they experience while in the body. Others don't see that, or apparently don't see it, and they're shocked and confused. Some think they're still alive. And some of these people, these ghosts, go on doing whatever they used to do because they're unaware that they're dead. And others, it may take quite a long time before they come to the realization that they're dead. And those are the ghosts who are deeply troubled, and to help them get over this sort of thing. And that's where a psychic ghost hunter can have a lot of success, when you express empathy for the ghost predicament and express familiarity and perform enough meditation to clear your mind of distractions, and you can be that stabilizing person that the ghost latches onto.
Mm-hmm. When you look at everything, and I want to get back to your books here very soon, when you look at everything where everybody seems to be focusing on demons and demonology, and all of a sudden what was a very traditional Catholic religious ceremony in order to get rid of demons and exorcisms, now it seems like everybody and their dog is an exorcist or a demonologist. Does this sit well with you?
No, in fact, people ask me if I deal with demons, and actually I have a couple of answers. One is I'm not fully convinced that they exist. I know there's a tremendous amount of information that suggests they do. The Roman Catholic Church, for instance, has records of 70,000 exorcisms that they performed over a period of, hundreds of years. And they have trained priests who go out and do this sort of thing. And I don't think they would establish that kind of process unless they believed in demons. So we can assume they do. They do believe in demons. I'm not convinced yet. I've encountered a lot of angry ghosts, mean ghosts, that might have been a demon, but I don't really get the impression that they were. I wouldn't really want to encounter a demon because I've seen some movies of possession. One of them I watched just last weekend, The Possession of Sarah Rose or somebody like that. It's a pretty good movie and it's based on a true story. And that was a pretty scary process this woman went through, and I wouldn't want to go through that. So if somebody tells me, hey, we're going to go to this haunted place this weekend, there may be a demon there, I don't go. Not because, I'm not fully convinced demons exist, but I'm not going to tempt fate by going there and exposing myself to a demon. So I stay away from demons, and if people call me up and they say, we think we've got a demon here, I just refer them to somebody who wants to do that sort of thing. But to me, it's just not worth the risk.
I agree,
it's
though.
It's bad enough to to have a ghost attached to you that is malevolent. And that happens. That happens a lot. That's why some paranormal investigators do a cleansing when they leave a place, and they use protection like St. Benedict metals and holy water, things like that, to cleanse themselves. I do that sort of thing. But attachment is bad enough. To be possessed by a demon, I think your life is completely ruined.
Does it disappoint you, though, that everybody seems to be on the demon kick, because that's really not what the paranormal is about?
Well, it's a little bit strange to me that people want to get to have that close encounter with a demon. I can't understand why somebody would want to do that. It's like trying to get a front row seat to a nuclear blast. Why would you want to do that? I think people are really foolish. I think they don't understand the risks. If demons exist and if they can do what they purportedly can do, I don't understand why a person would want to expose himself to that risk. I think it's crazy. It's bad enough dealing with malevolent spirits that you might encounter at places like Alcatraz and other places. Those are tough to handle. That I had an experience when we filmed at Alcatraz, and a bad guy followed me home, and it took me about 5 days to get him out of my house. He wasn't horribly disruptive, but he was a little freaky. He spoke to me in some pretty rough ways. And so I did cleansings and banishing rituals, and it took about 5 days to wear him down to where he went away. And that's bad enough, so no demons, thank you.
I would love to talk about Alcatraz for a minute, because that is apparently one of the most haunted places in the United States. What's it like investigating there?
It is incredibly exciting, and if our listeners are ever thinking of coming to the San Francisco Bay Area and seeking a paranormal experience, you've got to go to Alcatraz. Now, you can go out there at night. They have night tours, which are really better than the day tours, in spite of my statement earlier that you can experience the ghost anytime. It just gives you a creepier atmosphere, which is a lot of fun. But you can experience the ghost of Alcatraz night or day. So I would suggest you go out there. You have to go with a tour group. They take you out on the boat, and you stay with the rangers, but you have enough freedom that you can wander around a bit and get inside of the prison cells and go into the infirmary and places like that, and really feel like you have an opportunity to open yourself up to the spirits out there. There are quite a few out there.
Have you ever met up with Al Capone there?
No, I didn't, but I know people who have. There are, I think, not that many deaths of prisoners out there, but there were a number of prison guards who were killed during some of the riots and insurrections. But most people are not aware that Alcatraz really has been a bad place for a long time. When the Spanish first came into San Francisco Bay about 1776, they were told that Alcatraz was the home of evil spirits. And so for the 50 years that the Spanish developed San Francisco Bay, they never did anything with Alcatraz. Nothing at all. When the Mexicans took over in 1860, they did nothing with Alcatraz because they were aware of the Indian stories of the demons and horrible spirits that lived out there. It's only when the Americans took over in 1846 that they realized this is great real estate, so let's develop it. So they built a military facility out there, which included a prison. And prisoners were brought from all over the West, including renegade Indians who were taken there and tortured and killed. And so there were hundreds of prisoners out there during the 19th century that died there. During the 1906 earthquake, all the jails in San Francisco were damaged, so all the prisoners were taken to Alcatraz and set up out there for a number of years until the jails could be rebuilt. And during that time, there were lots of deaths that occurred. It was only, in the 1930s when the federal government took it over as a prison that you've got this Alcatraz that we all know about now. But it had this long history that generated lots of spirits before. And probably before the Spanish got there were something's going on there with the Indians that let them know there were evil spirits there. So Alcatraz has these layers of spirits that you might experience when you go out there. It's not just the prisoners who might have died there during the 1930s, 40s, and 50s.
It sounds scarier now because I didn't know that. You're like a history lesson here, my friend.
Yeah. When we first got out there, Zach and I were walking. We just barely got into cell block A, and we were walking towards the maximum security cells, and we barely got started, and we could hear the doors of the cells on the floors above us slamming open and closed. And there was nobody up there. I mean, we were in a small group, and the rangers are with us because even though we were a good, a responsible film group out there, they didn't want us walking around by ourselves. So there were things going on up there all the time we were out there. Very haunted place.
Excellent. I do have a quick question from Gloria in our SOR Space Travelers room. Jeff, are you familiar with Ralph Sarchi and his work? He exorcises places, not people, and he believes most hauntings are demonic.
I'm not familiar with him. He believes most spirits are demonic. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, sir.
No, I would take issue with that largely because I'm still not completely convinced of the reality of demons. I'm certainly willing to concede that they exist, but I just need to have a little bit more information. So many of the records of exorcism and possession fail to rule out some sort of organic or psychic process rather than demon possession. Especially those from decades ago where diagnostic techniques of schizophrenia and epilepsy and other illnesses were just not good. So somebody would develop epilepsy and think that there's a demon possessing this person. So because of that, I think a lot of the records that purportedly support the idea of demons are pretty flawed. So I would take issue with his view that most places that are haunted are infested with a demon. That's not been my experience.
I want to get back to your book about the California Gold Rush because that does continue right through my town. There's a museum around, I'm going to say 2 miles away from me that is very haunted. I actually, last October, went on my first paranormal investigation at that museum. There's a lady there named Agnes McVie that Canadian group Chronicles of the Unknown investigated when they came up here, and I went along with them, good friends of this show. And one of the things Agnes did was she apparently murdered her fiancé and parents in Scotland, then hopped a boat to come to Canada, made her way to the West Coast, and she developed a little bit of a game in the hotel that she lived at, where she ended up getting people drunk, stealing their gold, murdering them, to the tune of 50, 60 bodies that are around the local lake and the area. Do you find a lot of the Gold Rush Trail has a lot of those types of stories in it?
Oh, yeah, I mentioned earlier the Hornitos thing, but yes, there's quite a bit of that going on because, people had nowhere to put their gold except in their pockets. And unfortunately, a lot of successful gold miners bragged about their success. One of the first things that some of these people would do is run into town and go to the local bar and announce, "Hey, I struck it rich, drinks for everybody." And, that was a big tip-off that this guy is a prime target for robbing him. And, once you rob somebody, what you need to do is get rid of the guy. So they would just basically rob the person and kill him, and then dump his body down a mine shaft or throw it in a river or something like that. So that was pretty common in a lot of the gold rush towns down here in California.
I want to get to the West Coast because you have investigated everything from Seattle all the way down to the wine countries in and everywhere in between, and we're only about 60 seconds from a break. But do you think that the West Coast gets enough publicity for being as haunted as it is comparatively to the East Coast, where there's more population and there's older territories and a heck of a lot more bodies due to the Civil War and things like that?
Yeah, I think there's a bias for the East Coast, and I certainly appreciate that. But people think that California and Oregon and Washington are new when it comes to the history of the United States, and they don't realize that we have the California missions that were established first in 1772. So, we've got a couple hundred years here. The oldest house in San Francisco was built in 1774, and you can go in it to this day. In fact, it's being used in San Francisco. So we have a lot of old things out here. And but people say, "Oh, well, you're not as old as Boston or some of the mansions in the South that were built in the 1600s and early 1700s." And of course, we don't have the effects of the Civil War, which killed 500,000 Americans, both Confederate and Union troops. We don't have that sort of thing. But we have a lot of other things out here. We have places where Indians were massacred, and we've had, a lot of tragedies, forest fires and fires in cities and earthquakes. We've had a lot of earthquakes out here that have killed a lot of people. San Francisco earthquake, 3,000 people died in that earthquake. Mm-hmm. So we have those kinds of things too. But yeah, there's a tendency to think that San Francisco is fairly new when it comes to the game of generating ghosts. But as I said earlier, ghosts are made every day. And we have a lot going on out here that generates ghosts, unfortunately.
Absolutely. We are talking with author Jeff Dwyer tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can go to his website, jeffdwyer.com, to look at any of his books, from Ghost Hunter's Guide to Seattle and the Puget Sound, all the way to investigating the California wineries area. He's an amazing author. You can find any of his books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore around North America. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this break.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings. No matter where you are, it's time for you to make time for you.
Would you like to expand your clientele? Have you ever thought of online radio advertising? Check out spacedoutradio.com to get your name out there. Our listeners support those who advertise with us, so why not give it a try? We have the most competitive advertising prices out there. Just click on the advertising tab on spacedoutradio.com and contact us today.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, along with Paranormal Forum, the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, Euphoria Chronicles on Facebook, or the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook. Always a pleasure to do this live, 7 days a week, 3 hours a night. We go hard here because we want to be that show that you can count on here on Spaced Out Radio. We have a half an hour left with our guest, Jeff Dwyer, but before I bring him back on, I do want to remind you, in hour number 3, we're going to open up the phone lines to you. I want to hear your haunted stories, your haunted tales, 1-702-302-4556. That is for the next hour. We're going to open up the phone lines to you, and we're going to talk some paranormal, or if you want to ask questions in the Space Travelers room or the Spreaker chat room for Spaced Out Radio, we would appreciate that. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where we store our archives, like this show will be in the morning. You can go to Spaced Out Radio Show, click on subscribe, and boom, it opens it right up to you. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we bring in Jeff Dwyer. His website is jeffdwyer.com. You can find any of his books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore across North America. We're really privileged to have Jeff with us, and hopefully we can get you back on around Halloween time to share some real spooky stories with you.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
Seattle is a town that is probably the closest American city to me, and I've been there numerous times my entire life, and I just absolutely love it. How haunted is the Emerald City?
It's pretty haunted. I found ghosts all over that town. In fact, all over the Puget Sound area. I worked my way across Puget Sound up to Port Townsend and went to Manresa Castle, which is on the cover of my Seattle book. And that place has been featured in some ghost TV shows as well. That's a real haunted place. But getting back into the town, so much went on there. It had its own kind of gold rush went on there during the Alaska gold rush in the latter part of the 19th century. Seattle was the jumping off point for many people going up to the Yukon Territory, including my great-grandfather. And when they'd come back into Seattle loaded with gold, that's where they would get robbed and murdered and thrown in the Puget Sound. That sort of thing went on. And they had their big fires, and they had muddy streets and all kinds of things go on up there that created lots of accidents. So it's a real haunted town.
Did you ever get a chance to investigate the underground of Seattle? Because I have heard that is one freaky area.
Yeah, I did, and you have to go down there with a tour, but I'm kind of sneaky sometimes when I go on these tours. I'm the guy who kind of lags behind the group, and before you know it, I'm the guy who kind of got lost. So, and what I'm really doing is just kind of finding a spot that feels really hot to me, and I'll let the other members of the group pass on, and that's when I will try to pick up some EVP or sharpen up my senses and try to pick up something. But I found quite a bit going on down there. There's a lot of ghosts that are either not aware they're dead or they're enjoying the afterlife, because there's a lot of, I found people dancing and gambling and drinking and wandering about all over the underground of Seattle.
So when you're running through the underground and you're checking it out and you're kind of sneaking away from the tour, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? Like, do you have your gear with you that you're trying to get the evidence? And what are those ghosts saying to you?
Well, usually what I do is I have my audio recorder going, and I will just let that run, and I'll go to a spot, and if I pick up something, I'll just start speaking. I'll tell them who I am, and I'm here to see you, to see what you're doing here in Seattle. Ask if they're a gambler or a bartender or something like that, and just open myself up to communication, and I'll get responses. Sometimes people are not very friendly. The ghosts are not too friendly. They'll say, "Shut up," or "Get out of here." But I suppose they recognize that I don't belong, and they just want me out of there. And that's okay, too, because that's a ghostly experience that I really value. But usually it's something like that. There's not some long conversation, about exchanging histories, that sort of thing, but getting a few comments, I ask what they're doing, and you might hear drinking or looking for women, that kind of thing. And you get that in a lot of places in the underground, because it was largely a den of iniquity where there was opium dens and gambling and prostitution, that kind of thing went on down there.
Would you ever go to the darker side of the investigation? Because I know Washington State had the Green River Killer and all of the bodies that were strewn around the state, and even some into Oregon in regards to the murders. And as sad as it sounds, is that something that you would investigate, or do you leave topics like that alone?
I've been to the homes of a few murderers, and not that I anticipate finding the murderer there, but just largely out of curiosity. I've only been to the home of one murderer who was dead. And I went with a colleague who was certain that this fellow was inhabiting the house as a spirit. And I came away believing that's in fact the case. And this guy was really a pretty mean character, pretty rough, bad language, really bad language on the EVP. Hardly any of it you'd want to play for anybody in a public forum. But I've not been able to go to the homes of some of these more notorious serial killers. I went to the home of a young man who was committed a murder he was barely 18 years of age, and found that he was still alive in prison. I wasn't looking for his ghost, but I found that there was some sort of malevolent spirit in the house, and I always wondered if this spirit might have influenced this young man to commit the murder of his neighbor. I've always wondered that. I never got enough information to confirm that suspicion, however. But going to the dark side, I do, as I said earlier, go to places where there have been murders, that sort of thing. But I really don't relish the idea of getting too close to the murderer, because as spirits, if the murderer is dead, for instance, they could become attached to you. And I think if they got the impression that you're getting too curious about their life or their motives or what they did or where they hid the bodies, I think they could create quite a few disturbances in a living host. So I don't get too close to the murderers.
Have you ever tried the Shanghai tunnels in Portland?
Oh, yeah, I wrote about that in my Portland book. That's a lot of fun. Ghost Adventures filmed up there. That was a neat experience to go through there. It's quite extensive. It runs all over the city, and again, you have to go down in a tour. But that's okay because they give you a lot of time to kind of wander about a little bit on your own, and it's big enough that you can kind of get into a little cubbyhole somewhere or another small room and conduct a little bit of an investigation. But that's another place that was full of prostitution and gambling and drug abuse, and plus, as the name implies, a lot of guys were either drugged in the bars or they were just bought so many drinks they become so intoxicated they passed out. And they were shanghaied into the tunnels where they were kept for a day or two, sometimes longer than that, and then carried aboard ships where they were pushed into service aboard ships. And some of the guys died down there because they died of alcohol poisoning or one thing or another, or drug abuse. And so there's a lot of spirits wandering the tunnels in Portland.
One of our listeners from this show, she's actually a tour guide on the Shanghai tunnels, and Annalisa just said that they've actually opened up a new section that is only a couple weeks old here, and it's opened up a whole new realm to different spirits.
Yeah, there's quite a bit that's, as the city develops, sewer lines are put in, that kind of thing. Parts of the Shanghai tunnels were closed off. Some of them became unsafe, and I've heard a lot of talk from people I know up there about new areas that are being opened up, and I'm glad that this has happened. There's still a lot. What's available right now is still quite extensive. You can go down there and spend hours. And it's really well worth it. If you go to Portland, you've got to do the Shanghai Tunnel tour.
Do you get touched or pushed or jabbed, bitten, or any type of physical wear on your body during investigations?
Everything but the bitten. I haven't been bitten yet. I hope I never have bitten. But yes, I've been pushed and touched and scratched and that sort of thing. And it takes a tremendous amount of psychic energy for a ghost to do that. A lot of people will feel somebody standing behind them. That's a fairly common experience. But to actually get hit or scratched, that takes a ghost that has the ability to generate a lot of psychic energy. And that's a pretty powerful spirit that you're dealing with. So if you do have those experiences, getting hit, scratched, punched, pushed strongly, we need to be very cautious about that ghost because it may be quite malevolent. Now, sometimes ghosts do this simply because they feel that no one is paying attention to them. But most often it's a malevolent spirit that really means you harm.
Do you ever try to move them on to the light?
I've not done that. I have colleagues who do that. And one of the reasons I don't do it is I'm not certain that's an ethical thing to do because some ghosts don't go on to the light because they have business to do here. They want to protect loved ones, protect cherished possessions. They want to look after friends. Some of them are afraid to move on because they have been told all their lives that once you die, you're going to be judged, and you'll either go to hell or go to heaven, and they may feel that there's a good chance they're going to hell. Or there may be deceased spirits on the other side that they don't want to encounter, people they may have done wrong when they were alive. And so there are a lot of reasons why a ghost doesn't move from where it is. And without that specific information pertinent to each individual spirit, I'm not sure it's really ethical for me to try to push it, push that ghost onward.
Right. You get your voice back there?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just took a little bit of coffee and too much of it. Yeah, I just don't think it's something you can just go in and say, oh, I'm going to help the spirit move on, because there could be numerous reasons why the spirit can't move on or shouldn't move on. And I think it's presumptuous to assume that a ghost is stuck where we find them and they really want to go on. I think that's presumptuous to do that. So that's why I don't go in with the idea that I'm going to move this guy on.
We have a couple listeners who live in Louisiana. I would love for you to touch on how haunted New Orleans is. It's a town or a city that I've always wanted to go to. I've never got there yet, but there's just something about Mardi Gras that I think I have to get out of my system. You know, how fun is that place?
Well, I've never gone to Mardi Gras. I'll tell you, the crowds are crazy from what I hear and from what I've seen. So I'm not too interested in that. I like New Orleans when if you can find it at a quiet time. And although ghosts are there in daylight, it's easier to find them when you get later on into the evening, when the streets get a little bit empty, especially in the winter time. It's a very haunted city. It's an old city. It was founded in 1622, I believe it is, and it's had some major fires and major floods, including the flooding of Katrina, and so it's got all these layers of history. It's got the Civil War, and it's got slavery, and it's got a lot of prostitution, a lot of crime, that sort of thing. So it's got everything you need to have layer upon layer upon layer of ghosts from multiple generations. And unfortunately, as I said numerous times tonight, there are new ghosts being made there every day. It is the murder capital of America. Crime went down after Katrina for a while, but that's just simply because the bad guys left town. And after the town kind of was renovated and rejuvenated, the bad guys came back with their drug industries and other things, and now it's the murder capital of America.
It's kind of sad to hear that happen on that type of tone, but with the history that is there, does the voodoo play into anything?
Oh, voodoo's interesting. I've witnessed a few voodoo ceremonies, and a lot of people believe in it. I've been told that voodoo is powerful if you believe in it. So one of the ways of protecting yourself may be to maintain a disbelief. For me, I just find it historically and sociologically a fascinating phenomenon. I'm not sure exactly how it works, if it works. As I said, part of that is the belief of the targeted individual. If you put a curse on somebody and they believe in curses, they're going to suffer under that curse. If they don't, they just go upon their daily lives and ignore the whole thing. But voodoo's all over the place. There are voodoo shops, and you can go to the cemetery and see the grave of Madame Laveau, who was the big voodoo priestess back in the 1900s. And her grave is decorated with all kinds of offerings to this day. People leave whiskey bottles and money and jewelry, and it's curious that nobody will steal that stuff. The family comes and collects it, so you don't get a massive collection of this stuff. But nobody will touch anything, money or unopened bottles of whiskey left there. No one will touch it because they don't want to incur the wrath Madame Laveau. So people believe that her spirit is still powerful there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, she's
that's
very
a
well
show on
known
its
down
own.
there.
That's a show on its own.
Yeah, voodoo is really interesting. If you find somebody who's an expert on voodoo, it's really going to be a fun show.
Well, you know what's weird is every time I have tried to do a show, and my audience can attest to this, every time I've tried to do a show, whether it's on voodoo, black magic, Satanism, or something of the dark, or even when it comes to talking about, for instance, televangelists and Christianity, how, they're taking advantage of people. Every time I've tried to do a show on something along those lines, something always happens where I can't put that show on the air.
Really interesting.
Whether it's the guest, where I can't get a hold of the guest, I had to boot another guest off about half an hour before the show because she was trying to dictate the premise of the time that she agreed to for the 2-hour interview. And then she's like, well, I can only do 20 minutes. And I said, well, that does me no good. We can't do it. Another time, a gentleman's power went out in his town in Florida, could not bring him on. It's been weird. Just weird every time I try to go into the religious side on this show.
Well, powerful forces are working against you, Dave.
I tell you, I don't understand.
Well, I don't know. The so-called dark side of this paranormal stuff. There's a lot of creepy stuff out there, and I tend to stay a little bit away from it because I've had spirits attached to me for brief periods of time, and I wouldn't want anything stronger than that going on. So I tend to stay away from it. It fascinates me, though.
We're down to about 8 minutes left with you here, Jeff, and I appreciate it. Jeff Dwyer is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His website, jeffdwyer.com. If you want to find any of his books, go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore across North America. We would appreciate that. Is there a book out there that you have written or are currently writing that just really got you excited to write?
Yeah, it's my book on the psychic methodology. It's just called Psychic, Using Your Psychic Powers to Experience Ghosts. I wrote it because principally I use psychic methods for my paranormal investigation, supplemented with technology. But I really wanted to know more about it, and I wanted to define what I do and how I do it. So I wrote that book, and I'm really, really excited about it because I don't think there's a book out there that is as clear and concise about how a person can develop their own psychic ability to experience ghosts. The books that I've looked at previously are somewhat self-serving. There'll be a psychic who has had a fair amount of success, so they write a book about how wonderful they are and all the spirits they've talked to. But it really doesn't help a new person or somebody who has a little bit of psychic experience who wants to develop that to the point where they can, access it any time. And I'm not talking about becoming a psychic where you do readings for people. I'm talking about becoming psychically sensitive to paranormal phenomena, not only ghosts but also imprints. So that book I'm very excited about. To me, it's still, among all the books I've written in this field, that one is, I think, closest to my heart and my spirit because it really enabled me to define what I do, how I do it, and lay that out in a way that can help other people become more successful when it comes to experiencing ghosts.
And we'll look forward to that one as well.
It's on Amazon.com right now. You can find it there
wow.
right now.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been out for about a year and a half. And to me, that's really the book. If somebody were to take one book in this whole field that will help them to have more experiences with ghosts, it's that book.
Wonderful. I do want to get a few more questions in from our audience here because they have piled up while we've been kind of chatting away here, starting off with Claudia and the SOR Space Travelers. She's wondering what happens and what you know about, Jeff, when a large group of people die together, say on 9/11 or in a tsunami or during Hurricane Katrina. What happens when they cross to the other side?
Yeah, I really wish I knew when they cross to the other side, because, the ghosts that we encounter are those that have not crossed over. They're what we call earthbound ghosts. And once they cross over, most people who delve into that say that once you cross over, you don't come back. You're not coming back. So I don't really know what happens once they cross over. But the earthbound ghosts who die amongst several other people, that's an interesting situation, and I believe that when they are liberated from the body, they see the other ghosts around them. They see the other spirits around them, and I suspect that they stay together for a long period of time. I was told, I haven't been to South Manhattan since 9/11, but I was told that, and I'm told to this day, that it's still an area that sensitive people pick up on large groups of spirits moving around the streets, particularly right around the site of the Twin Towers. These are groups of spirits that seem to be confused about where they are and where they're going. So here we are many, many years after the event, and a lot of psychics feel that there are large groups of people still there.
Joe has a question in the SOR Space Travelers room on Facebook. Have you ever come across ghosts of animals?
Yes, I have, in my own house, in fact. I believe that higher animals do create a ghost when they die. Fortunately, cockroaches don't have ghosts, but our dogs have ghosts. In fact, in my experience, we've had a couple of pets die over the years, and we've seen them. In fact, there's one that passed away about a year ago, and I see him every once in a while at the base of the stairs in the morning when I come downstairs. I see him there. He's a partial apparition. He was a Sheltie, so I see his nose and face and this white mass of hair on his chest, and he's there. And sometimes we'll hear them walking around the house. So yes, I've seen ghosts of animals.
A couple of weeks ago, I actually was coming back into the house during a break because I was checking to see if the northern lights were going on outside. And I opened the door, and I had a shadow of a cat walk right by my feet. And outside, it was strange as anything. Strange as anything.
Yeah, I think the lore about black cats might actually be ghost cats. Just showing up as these black, shadowy figures that resemble cats.
One more question for you before we go, and this comes from Joe. He's the amorous one of the Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers group, and he is asking if you have ever been around a ghost that tried to become amorous.
No, I don't think I have, but I've had an experience with a female ghost that was really strange. Lloyd Auerbach, who you may have heard of, he's the foremost researcher and author in our field. He talks about shared space. He was investigating a haunted bar down south of San Francisco, and this female spirit walked through him and did so very slowly to the point where she seemed to have paused while she was in the space of his body. And he actually had the perceptions that he described as feeling feminine. And I thought, this is really interesting because the ghosts are psychic phenomenon, and basically this female ghost, was projecting her psychic awareness onto his mind, and that's why he felt that way. And a few years after his experience, I had a similar experience at the Coleman Mansion, which is south of San Francisco, built in 1881. The ghost of Carmelita Coleman walked right through me, and it's a strange feeling for me to tell you that I really felt this feminine essence for a couple seconds as she passed through me. How did I know she passed through me? I saw her approach me. She was a green apparition coming down the hall. I just stood there watching her. She just walked right through me. And the moment she was in my space, I really felt that got that impression of femininity. So I guess that's getting to the answer to the question.
Jeff, I want to say thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on to share your stories. And like you mentioned, I would love to get you on right before Halloween to tell us some scary tales.
Oh, let's do that, okay? I'll have some new things to tell you because I've got some big plans for this summer.
Awesome. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with our audience. We really do appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure, Dave. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. That's Jeff Dwyer, author extraordinaire of The Paranormal. His website, jeffdwyer.com. You can check out any of his books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore across North America. Give you a few of his titles: The Ghost Hunter's Guide to Monterey and California's Central Coast, the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle and the Puget Sound, which we talked about, New Orleans. Get his books while you can. They're very good reads. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this break.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Readings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm just really, really glad to be here.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, if you're on Paranormal Forum, the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, or the SOR chat room on Spreaker. We really appreciate you tuning in and making things happen. Jeff Dwyer was with us the last 2 hours. We've been talking paranormal. We're going to talk to paranormal tomorrow night as well, as we will talk about the most haunted places in America with Christopher Balzano. It'll be an interesting show. I hope you tune in for that one as well. Remember, if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can. Give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio. You can also ask to join our SOR Space Travelers if you want to be a part of the group that's there every night. They're pretty cool people, and we really appreciate everything that they do. If you want to take part in our SOR chat room on Spreaker, all you got to do is sign up, give us a follow, and log in and join the chat. It's that simple. And we take questions out of both those rooms as well. Euphoria Chronicles, where we get all of our mainstream news, that's on Facebook as well. And Paranormal Forum, you can sign up for their website, paranormalforum.net. They're followers of us in the evening as well. We really appreciate you taking the time. Remember, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. On Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where we store our archives, is Spaced Out Radio Show. Click on subscribe for that. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. What I want to do now is I want to open up the phone lines to you. 1-702-302-4556. We're talking paranormal tonight and tomorrow night. I think it'd be really cool to hear your paranormal stories. If you have a question because you don't want to go on air, you could go in one of the chat rooms and ask it. And you know what? It makes for some interesting radio when we get to involve you. Because in the end, this show is about you, your experiences, my experiences. And we bring them together to try and formulate the equation as to what is really going on, because there's so many different opinions out there as to what we are doing and what's happening with us. Whether it's ghosts, whether it's UFOs, whether it's cryptids, we kind of hit them all around here. So the phone line, once again, is 702-302-4556 if you want to call in, or if you have any questions. Like Bill Cardwell in the SOR Space Travelers, he is asking, has anyone seen here in the chat room seen a ghost or communicated with one? I have done both. The first ghost I ever saw was a little girl. She looked about 3 years old. At first I thought I was looking at my daughter until I realized that my daughter, who was a sleepwalker, she was actually laying beside me on the couch. And I woke up and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning when this happened. The details of that was I was working in radio in Vancouver. And I was working in sports, so when I got home at night after the long drive home, because I lived about an hour out of Vancouver, I would go, while my family was sleeping, go watch some TV, check out the sports highlights to see if I had missed anything, because that's what us sportscasters did. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I heard the little footsteps come down the stairs, and I look, and there's my beautiful little 3-year-old toddler sleepwalking. And so I called her over and told her to come lay down with me on the couch. And I put her on my chest. She fell back asleep. And I must have fallen asleep while the sports highlights were on. I had my TV on a timer, so it turned off. And my neighbor had this dog, where at 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning, he would get into an absolute barking fit. and he would bark and bark and bark. I mean, if there was a crosswind, he was one of those dogs that was worth 20 to 30 minutes of barking. One of those annoying barking dogs that you have. And he started barking, and it woke me up because I was tired. And I only had about 3 hours to go before I had to wake up, get ready, and turn right around to go back out to Vancouver for work. So I'm lying on the couch and I'm facing the back of the couch. And I realize that my little girl is on my arm because my right arm is asleep. And I hear this damn barking. So I try and turn myself over so I can slip my arm out from underneath her, slide off the couch as quietly and as peacefully as possible so I can go to the window and tell the dog to shut up. And as I rolled over and started sliding my arm underneath, I saw something blurry in front of me. And about less than 2 feet away, there was this little girl standing there. And when I talk about her, I can see her. I can still see her, what she looked like to this day. She was wearing a white nightie, like one of those cotton nighties. Her hair was down past her shoulders, but it had those really large ringlets in it. She had the puffy cheeks like toddlers do, with, you know, how the cheeks kind of push in on the mouth. The funny part about it is her eyes were dark, and she was staring at me. And I could see right through her nightie. And to give you a timeline of when this was, I still had a VCR back then. And through the apparition, I could see on my VCR clock it was 4:02 a.m. And I made eye contact with her. She's staring at me. I'm staring at her. And I quickly was startledly scared, as anybody would be. And I rolled back over. I had this blanket, and for some reason, I actually threw the blanket over my head, and I'm wide awake. My eyes are large, and I pinched myself to see if I was actually awake, because I knew our place was haunted. I didn't know that I would actually see a spirit. I caught my breath, knowing that my daughter was still right on my arm, so I knew it wasn't her. And I turned over, and she was gone. 5 days later, my ex-wife, ex-Mrs. SOR, that's what we call her, good lady, I was out, and she had been awakened by our piano keys being played. We had 2 cats, and so she went to see if the cats were jumping around on the piano. And we had one of those 2-tiered stairways, where the first tier was about 3 stairs, and you go onto the flat part, and the next set was about 12. And she got to the flat part in between the stairways. She turned on the hallway light, and she was about to call the cats when, sitting on our piano bench, was a little girl wearing a white nightie, black ringlet hair, pressing down on the piano keys. And that's what she saw. That place was so haunted. So haunted. According to Derek White Skycloud, who's been a guest on this show with Chronicles of the Unknown, and we had a group reading with him one night, probably about 6 months later. And that was the first time I had met Derek. We're going back, now we're going back 15 years ago. And he actually said, without telling him any information, he goes, "Do you have a 2-tiered stairway?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Okay, well, the little girl's name was Sally, and she died in the home when she was being chased by one of her brothers, and she slipped on the stairs and fell down because," he goes, "your stairway is very steep." I said, "Yes, it is." And he goes, "Well, she broke her neck landing on the fall." I've never confirmed that, but Derek is a pretty genuine guy, so I've always gone by that story. And He also said there were 3 other spirits in the house. He goes, do you ever hear voices or feel anxiety in the bathroom? And I said, yes. Sometimes if I'm having a bath or the wife is having a bath or the kids are in the shower or something along those lines, all of a sudden you feel this anxiety that you have to get out of there. And he was like, okay. He goes, because I'm picking up after Sally passed away, her mother couldn't handle it and she committed suicide in the bathtub by slitting her wrists. So there's spirit number 2. Spirit number 3 was in the master bedroom, in the closet. Apparently someone who was an addict on heroin or something along those lines, because he was hiding it from the family, would go into the closet, shoot up, and what he would do was scratch the walls. And we used to hear scratching on the walls in our closet all the time, and we'd check the walls to see if we had any cats in there. We knew we didn't have mice or rats because our cats wouldn't have allowed it. They were that way, as cats are. Yet the cats were never in the closet. And every night, for weeks on end, we'd hear scratching on the wall. The 4th spirit was outside on the yard. And this one I actually did have confirmed after the reading. Derek had stated that before the area was developed 50, 60 years previous, it was a favorite hunting area for hunters looking for deer or cougars or bears. And he said a hunter was accidentally shot and killed. And we'd hear tapping on our windows outside. Almost like you would put a coin on glass. Tap, tap, tap. And that happened quite often. Orbs in that house. We had all of our drinking glasses go missing. I think we were down to 2. We had all of our teaspoons go missing. And we went searching. My youngest daughter, we'd have cleanup, and you've probably heard me say this story recently. We'd have cleanup happening in right before bed. Wake up the next morning, her room is a disaster with toys everywhere. And we'd wake up and we'd say, what did you do? Did you wake up in the middle of the night? Because nighttime's for sleeping. She'd be like, I was sleeping. I didn't make a mess. Well, how come there's toys all over your room? And it wasn't until the kids were at Grandma and Grandpa's one time where we heard the creaking of her door, because she had a door that needed to be oiled. So we always heard her when she opened her door. We liked that because then we could tell what was going on. But this time her door was closed. And we heard the door open and creak open. Then we heard the pitter-patter of little feet. And we'd hear something climb up on our bed. And then, just like children do, using Mom and Dad's bed for a trampoline, our bed was a little squeaky. We couldn't afford a new bed. So we had a hand-me-down from my family. And it was squeaky. And we'd hear the up and down jumping of squeaking. And we lived in a duplex. This was one half of a duplex. Our friends lived on the other side of the duplex. They had nothing. They had no activity in that house whatsoever. And yet, on our side, completely haunted. Absolutely, completely haunted. It was weird. I remember my friend's wife, who was next door, she was a stay-at-home mom. She would actually call me, say, are you at home with the wife having a good time in the bedroom? Because the bed would be squeaking. And I'd be like, no, I'm in Vancouver. Why? And the wife is at work out of town as well. She'd be like, well, it sounds like somebody is doing it on your bed right now. Your bed is so squeaky. And she goes, I was just wondering if you guys were taking advantage of time away from the kids. Like, nope, no, there's nobody home. And this would happen all the time. And the funny part about it is, our friends who lived on the other side of the duplex would actually hear things going on in our place. Yes, we had a dog. Yes, we had the cats. It could have very well been them. But when say we would go out. When we finally decided to move out, we were cleaning up the place. And I remember this distinctly. I was wiping down right beside the bathroom. We had this open closet where it was, that's where we stored our towels and washcloths and everything. And there was a storage room right beside the bathroom, and that door was open. And as I was cleaning, my ex-wife was talking to me, and out of that storage room where we kept a lot of my daughter's toys, we heard the voice, "Mommy, are you there?" And I looked at my ex-wife. I said, "Did you just hear that?" She goes, "No." "What did it say?" I said, "Mommy, are you there?" She literally grabbed the cleaning bottles and said, "That's it. I'm getting the F out of here, and I'm never coming back here. This place scares the hell out of me." And I said, "Good call." We locked the door, and we never went back. Now, fast forward a few years, my daughter, who is now in her teens, had a friend that she went to high school with who lived just a few doors up, but moved there after we had already left, so they didn't get to know each other that way. They didn't meet until high school. And every time we drove by our old duplex to go to her friend's house, drop my daughter off or to pick up her friend, my daughter would see the little girl still standing in her old bedroom window, staring back at her. Freaks me out. I still get goosebumps over that. 1-702-302-4556 is the call-in number. I know a bunch of you have paranormal stories out there. I would love to hear them. Come on and join me. 702-302-4556. I loved what Jeff said earlier on in the interview when we were talking about the weekend warriors and the paranormal groups out there who are just out to gather information for themselves, and they're not really about the field of paranormal. That's kind of the reason why I don't do a lot of paranormal shows on Spaced Out Radio. It's not that I don't like the paranormal. I love the paranormal. It's just very, very difficult when you're putting this show together, and Corey, my booking coordinator, can attest to this now that she's done it for a couple of months, to get credible people to talk about paranormal. And the reason why is, I don't know about you, but for me, I really don't have a real interest in learning what is hiding at an abandoned hotel or at an abandoned prison or a shut down insane asylum or hospital. I really don't. Like all these places that you see the television shows go to, that are public knowledge, that are public for ghost hunting groups to go on in there. They're like tourist attractions now. It doesn't really interest me in chatting to people about those. Because I think, as Jeff stated, most of these groups don't have a solution on what to do with the evidence. And I know I've complained about that in your ad nauseum on this show, and you're probably sick of hearing it. But for those who are new, I think it's important to understand that if you're going to be a ghost hunter, in my opinion only, and I could be wrong, but I really truly believe that what you need to do is you need to figure out why you are doing this. Are you doing this to benefit yourself, maybe to calm your nerves for the sake of trying to figure out if there is an afterlife or not, and going on these investigations is helping you maybe with your anxiety or something along those lines? I think that's cool. As someone who suffers from depression and anxiety, I think it's fantastic that you would do that. But if you're just there to collect evidence that everybody else has collected, what are you doing with it? And it comes down to the old adage. There's a lot of people who live in rundown areas because maybe they can't afford to move to a better area. Maybe they can't afford to be in a safer place. So they take what they can afford. And I always look at ghost hunting along this line. How are you going to react if, say, a single mom or a single dad or a poor family, and there's a lot of people who are running low on funds out there, are in a haunted situation where a ghost is taunting them or taunting their children? They're scared. They don't know what to do, so they contact a paranormal group. And this paranormal group, say, comes in and does all their tests and says, yes, your place is haunted. This is the evidence that we got. And on EVPs, it's very rude. It's, get out of my house. It's, I hate you. I hate your kids. I hate your dog. I'm going to kill you. I mean, we're talking reality here. And I know I'm using a hypothetical situation, but we are talking a little bit of reality here. And then the ghost hunters leave, saying, hey, your place is haunted. Most of them do not offer solutions out there. How do you get rid of those ghosts? How do you make your life safer? How do you keep safe for your family? Because as a parent, that's our job. But to me, it's the selfishness of a lot of these paranormal groups who don't offer those solutions, because all they care about is the evidence that they get. You know, you have to be able to provide some sort of solution, especially if you're helping out people. And that's why when it comes to paranormal groups, I vet the living hell out of them before I bring them on the show. And when I first started Spaced Out Radio, believe it or not, the groups out of any topic that I had troubles with, the groups that were causing the most troubles in skipping times, you know, saying at the last minute they couldn't do the interview, it was all paranormal. Very rarely have I ever had troubles getting someone on to talk about UFOs or Bigfoot or any type of cryptids. People love talking about that. But for some reason, when it comes to the paranormal, it's always a big struggle. And anybody, I mean, you can go on Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker, Mixler, wherever you want to go. And there are literally thousands of paranormal/ghost shows out there. And if you listen to them, to the majority of them, they're all mentioning the same thing. What kind of gear do you use? Do you find that the K2 doesn't work? Do you find that the Ovilus is now the new technology to use? Do you use a FLIR? What is your opinion on whether or not a psychic should be involved in a paranormal investigation? What did you find at the Waverly House? What did you find in this prison? Did you get to talk to this spirit on floor number 2? Same thing, over and over and over again. And that's my frustration with the paranormal. We're going to take a quick break here, our final break of the night. When we come back, I want to hear this phone's ring. I want to hear from you. Tell me about your paranormal stories. We only got 30 minutes left. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll talk to you on the other side.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
The last Monday of the month on Spaced Out Radio is a night of psychic vision, mediumship, UFO and ET contact, Bigfoot stories, animal communication, and so much more with me, Elizabeth Anglin. I'd love it if you would join host Dave Scott and I on the myriad of topics we delve into. Every month, we share new views that may help you understand your own experiences. So tune on in at spacedoutradio.com and stamp your cosmic passport.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and download our archives for free. And don't forget to get your Space Travelers membership today. Now, back to tonight's show. Welcome back for the final half hour tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking paranormal here on the show. And thank you so much for everyone joining in. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, on Paranormal Forum, on the SOR chat room, on Spreaker, and if you're on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, as well as the SOR Space Travelers group, thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow night on the show, we are sticking with the paranormal. We're going to talk Haunted America, the most haunted places across the USA. Our guest will be Christopher Balzano. That is tomorrow night on the mighty Spaced Out Radio, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, for 3 hours. It's very interesting how everybody seems to have a paranormal experience. We've had a number of them while we've been on this show. I will get into those. One of our newest listeners, first time listening in tonight, Trippin' Fool, on the Spreaker side of our chat typed out a really, really cool story. I'm going to read it to you. He says, when I was in high school, every Thursday night around 9:45 p.m. at my ex-girlfriend's house, we would always see a shadow walk by 2 doors. There was a wall in between the doors. It got so strange, we would have a friend at the house and back of the house, and we would see the shadow walk by both doors again. For almost 2 months, we would switch spots and still see the shadow walk by. We were broke, so there was no cameras, but we had enough friends to where we could have 2 to 4 people in spots. Every Thursday at 9:45 p.m., we would gather and wait to see the shadow. We could never figure out any excuse for it except that it had to be a ghost. Her mom was very religious and wouldn't believe us. She was in awe as it passed the first door. The second door, she started crying in disbelief. The next day, she packed a bag and left. My ex and my friends had to pack up the house. Oh, by the way, the doors were glass doors as well. And the wall between the doors was 8 feet with a fireplace. The mantel was those glass blocks above that had a 2-foot-high window on both sides of the chimney. Only the doors had a shadow go by. No evidence at the end of 10 to 12 of us seeing the shadows, and none of us had a camera. This was back in 1988, 1989. They never thought about doing the flower trick, but after time of them switching spots, there was no way anyone could walk by without us seeing them. That is freaky. That is absolutely freaky. I have seen a shadow person. And during this show, we have had many, many experiences in regards to paranormal encounters. I'll get into those, but I do want to mention the phone number in case you'd like to call in. 1702-302-4556 is the chat number once again. During this show, we have had a few experiences that are quite unexplainable. We've had the extraterrestrial at the window. That happened on April 20th of 2015. How could I forget that date? About 10 minutes into the show, where I saw something move outside the window as I was talking Buddha of all things. And while my guest, Harvey Kraft, was talking and answering the first question, I put my microphone on mute, turned to look out the window to see if there were any friends there, because I didn't really need my dogs barking while I'm doing the show. And I turn and look, and there is 2 giant black eyes that were filling out the biggest head of a gray that I have ever seen. That was weird. There was a time I had Angie Dixon on the show, and that was actually kind of cool when I had her on, and this was back in September or October of this past year, because we moved up north. Our house is about 40 years old, and I went outside because the Perseid meteor shower was on. So this would have been in August. I go outside for the Perseid meteor shower during one of the breaks. And in behind my house, about 15 feet from my house, I have a Douglas fir tree. That's probably 20 feet tall. Still quite a young tree. And as I'm staring up in the sky, I see something out of the corner of my eye that is white. I turn my head and look, and standing there is a full-body apparition of a man. Dark hair, white t-shirt, very white-blue jeans. And I kind of jumped back because it startled me. And I watched him disappear right in front of me. That night with Angie, we were talking about psychic dreaming. So we come back on the air after the break, and what we see, or what I explained to Angie, is I said, I just had a paranormal experience. So I tell her what I just saw, much like I just told you, and all of a sudden, she starts picking up the spirit in my backyard. Angie's in New York. I'm 4,000 miles northwest of her, here in British Columbia. This is what Angie was able to pick up. She's like, was there an extension put on your house? She goes, because I see an extension being built. And I said, yes, there was. She goes, okay, the gentleman's name is Richard, but he goes by Rick. He's probably around 46, 47 years old. And he's looking for his shop. And she says, before there was the extension built on the house, that's where his shop was, and he liked to work with wood. And he's standing there confused, telling me, where is my shop? He couldn't figure it out. So we continued on with the interview, and after the show was over, as I do with every night when we had the 2-hour format, I would immediately call the guests after the show just to make sure that they had a good time, to make sure that everything was very, very good for them on an experience level. And what happened there was Angie was still chatting with Rick. And I asked Rick a few questions through Angie. I asked her, or him, if he wanted to go to the light. He said he didn't, that he really, really liked the yard, and it felt like home, and he'd really like to stay here. But he was very quick to say through Angie, like, don't worry, I don't come inside. I just stay in the yard. I like it out here. I never enter the house. Like he was freaked out that we were all of a sudden going to say, well, are you coming into the house, and are you stirring up things there? And it's funny because Mrs. Spaced Out Radio and I have a couple of K2 meters, and we've never got anything in our house. Never picked up anything in our house. And Rick was like, he was like, I like to hang out in the yard. And I remember when we moved into the house, while we were unpacking the U-Haul truck, I had sworn in my front yard that I had seen a spirit walk by in light clothing. And I remember telling Mrs. SOR that. And so I asked through Angie if that was Rick. And Rick said, yes. And then he went, oh man, I'm really sorry you saw me. You weren't supposed to see me. Nobody is supposed to see us. And that made me pose a question, and I didn't think about that until afterwards, because hindsight is always 20/20. It made me wonder if there are rules on the other side. It's kind of hard to get a guest on to talk about that, because how would we really know if there are rules on the other side? Because he had stated I was not supposed to see him. And that's why he quickly disappeared. So I explained to Rick, I said, you're more than welcome to stay on the yard. You are more than welcome to hang out. I said, but I need a favor if you're going to stick around. In my area, we have a lot of wild animals. It never surprises me or ceases to amaze me on a daily basis if there's deer in my yard, We're getting into bear season, so soon there will be bears. I've had bears in my carport going through my garbage. For some reason, I enjoy that, even though it's bad. I don't mind cleaning up after them. It's my sacrifice that I have to make to live way out in the sticks here. I've seen a cougar in my neighbor's yard. Don't like seeing them, especially because I have 2 dogs. One is a little Chihuahua Dachshund. I also have a toddler. They're easy targets for wild animals. We also have a moose population, which I've never seen in my yard, but I know they're there. We have a badger population. I've never seen one of those. I know there's a fox that lives up on the hill right across the green belt from my house, because I don't have any neighbors behind me, except this big walking trail, and we call it the green belt. There's wolves in the area, coyotes. Can go outside anytime and hear the animals. It's actually quite cool. Last night after the show, or 2 nights ago with Samantha Mowat, I walked outside to catch some fresh air before I went to bed. And I have frogs. 3 frogs. 3 tree frogs. One big, probably 4 inches long, and 2 little tree frogs hopping through my carport. There's always some sort of animal. So I had said to Rick, through Angie, I said, you're more than welcome to stay, but I need a favor. And what that favor was I said, I need you to keep the wild animals out, especially the bears and cougars. And I said, I need that because of my children. So if you could help out with that, you're more than welcome to stay. And he agreed to that. And then I said, is there anything else you would like? He goes, through Angie, are you building another shed? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do plan on that. He goes, could you put some wood in there for me to work on? Absolutely. If that's what I have to do to keep the ghost in my property happy, what's a couple pieces of 2x4? It's pretty simple, right? So, that's what we do. I haven't built the shed yet. That'll be built hopefully this summer. And I'm going to make sure that I have a few scrap pieces of wood from the build left in there specifically for Rick. But here's where it gets interesting, because like I had just mentioned, I had asked Rick to keep the wild animals out. Well, one day, our dogs start going crazy. It's about 7 o'clock at night. I'm down in the studio here, trying to get ready for that show, doing my research like I do every night. And I hear the dogs go nuts upstairs, and all of a sudden, I hear the wife yelling, and because it's muffled and she's on the other end of the house, I didn't realize she was calling me, but I thought she was just telling the dogs to shut up. And then, so I make my way out of the studio, and she's like, did you see the bear in the backyard? No, didn't see the bear. And the funny part about it was, when she saw the bear, it was absolutely racing out of our backyard. Like it could not, like, how can I put this? Like it saw a ghost, and it couldn't get out of our backyard fast enough. It found the corner of our yard, climbed up the fence, and was gone. And it always makes me think now, was that Rick, my ghost on my property, scaring the bear away? Because I told him I didn't mind the deer. And we've had plenty of deer in our yard. But when that bear took off, it makes me wonder if he actually scared the bear away. I'm curious to know that. And my abilities are so hit and miss, I don't trust myself going out there saying, hey, Rick, was that you that scared off the bear? Because I don't trust myself with that. Bonnie in the SOR Space Travelers room saying, it was Rick, of course. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Bonnie. But it's just interesting. If it was him, which I'm hoping that it was, I hope he continues to do that because he's holding up his end of the bargain. And I will have to hold up my end of the bargain and make sure that when I do get a shed built, that he has some wood in there to build. And I'll leave a hammer and a few nails. I'll get really freaked out if one day I go in there and there's a birdhouse sitting in there, freshly built. That would freak me out a little bit, but in a cool way. We've had, when Anthony Kenyatta was on the show, talking about Harold the Haunted Doll. Before the show, when I was talking to Anthony, because I talked to every guest a few hours before the show, just to make sure they're all prepared and everything, Anthony had stated to me, he goes, do not be surprised if Harold makes himself known during this show. And I remember saying to Anthony, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, Harold has been known to jump in on phone conversations or cut phone lines dead when he is being mentioned. Sometimes he will show himself during the show. Maybe he'll disrupt your computer, something along those lines. So I was like, yeah, okay. Let's see if he does anything. I wasn't prepared for what happened. I don't think you can prepare for it. I was ready for the phone to go dead or my computer to all of a sudden go sluggish or cut audio or something along those lines. But 40 minutes into the show, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Anthony's answers and I'm asking questions. And when you see something out of the corner of your eye. So, of course, once again, I put my microphone on mute. And I looked to my left. I just peered over my shoulder. And standing probably 2.5, 3 feet away from me was this cloaked being. Very thin, very petite, almost like a skeleton that had a cloak draped over it. That type of thin I'm talking about. Twiggy type thin. And there it was, standing there cloaked. It was about 5 feet tall. And of course, I jump back because that seems to be my natural reaction with everything is I just jump back and I'm like, ah! I usually use some sort of expletive starting with F in that part. And it disappeared. So I came back on the air and I said, after Anthony had finished, and I said, Anthony, I said, Harold just showed up. And he goes, oh, what happened? And if you've heard Anthony on this show before, you'll know, and that's the way he talks, like, oh, what happened? And I told him what had happened, that there was a cloaked figure. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, that doesn't surprise me at all. He goes, in fact, just a few days ago, when I was talking to a lady on the phone, she had a 4 to 5 foot black cloaked figure appear in her house. And that's got to be Harold. That's just the way it works sometimes. Or how about, I believe it was last week, when we were talking to Robert Murch about Ouija boards. When I saw the reflection of a very pale, very dead face in the window right in front of me. That made me jump. It almost looked... You remember the horror movie with Michael Myers, that weird grayish mask? That's what it looked like. But it wasn't outside because I knew it was a reflection coming from behind me in the studio here. It's amazing what can happen when you do a show like this. It really is. And if you saw me right now, I'm actually smiling because this is what this is about. And I'm never going to BS any of you. I have no reason to. But you'll always get the truth. And that's just the way we do it here on the mighty SOR. It's great. And I hope those types of experiences continue. Although I'm still not too sure about the alien guy. I'm not sure if I want him back. Because that one was kind of trippy. I'm sure it'll happen, though. Because with my luck, that's just the way things go sometimes. But what do you do? I love reading your stories, too. Like we did with Trip and Fool. Hey, Trip and Fool, I just want to say thank you for finding our show tonight. Thank you for the comments that you made in regards to that you're really enjoying it. We hope that you become a regular, and thanks for giving us an opportunity. It's all we ask is an opportunity from every one of you. Tell a friend about this show. That's how we're going to grow bigger. We're going to grow better. We've already got 3 advertisers, our first 3 advertisers that have inquired about advertising on the Spaced Out Radio website. Hopefully that's the start to something a little bit bigger, a little bit better. We're working on the website tonight, making some changes with Mrs. SOR. I've given her a deadline of June 15th that the SOR Space Travelers Club has to be up and running. And we're going to have 3 different packages for that. We're going to have a 3-month package at $7 a month. We're going to have a 6-month package at $6 a month. Or we're going to have the full year package at $5 a month. We're just getting everything set up. And you know, the fun part about it is, when you're starting a business like we have started, you have to take your time. And then all of a sudden, you have to go to the bank and get a business account. Because you got to be legal. Taxes need to be charged. The government needs their portion. There's our man Bumblefoot. It's that time of the night, my friends. Space Travelers, we're wrapping it up for this Thursday night, early Friday morning if you're on the East Coast. Remember, all you got to do if you want to learn more about Bumblefoot, just click on the Bumblefoot banner on spacedoutradio.com. You can find his Twitter, his website, links to his music, his album, Little Brother is Watching, and all his music. Oh, and you can also send him a message on social media, like William Walkup did. William Walkup sends Bumblefoot a message and says, "Hey, heard your music on Spaced Out Radio. Love it. Downloading it now. Just wanted to say thanks." Bumblefoot messaged him right back saying, "Hey, I appreciate you, and I appreciate Dave with Spaced Out Radio. It's awesome." He's a real dude. Not just a stuck-up rock star like many of them are. What can you say? He was with Guns N' Roses. How could he not be? Tomorrow night on the show, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, we get things going. We're talking Haunted America with Christopher Balzano, the most haunted places in the United States. That's where we're going tomorrow night. 3 hours long as we do this every night of the week. I think we're one of the only shows that does that 7 days a week. Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be in Saturday and Sunday night. Remember, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, we can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where you can subscribe to our archives, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. Good changes are a-coming. Tell a friend. Do me that favor. Tell a friend. Let them know what we're all about. Because that's why we're here. We're here for you, the listener. And that's how we're going to build this into something big, into something better, and that way we're going to get noticed. So hopefully we can take this to a bigger level than where we are now. That'll be with your help. Talk to you in 21 hours. Good night.